Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into the sources surrounding a really interesting piece of gear. It's the MXR M292 Carbon Copy Deluxe Analog Delay. Yeah, we've got quite a bit here. Engineering docs, player reviews, you name it. And we're trying to figure out why this pedal, which came out in 2018, is seen as, well, the top dog in MXR's current delay lineup. Our mission, really, is to unpack how they managed to blend that pure, old-school analog warmth with, all the modern digital controls people expect now.
Right, and that's the fundamental tension, isn't it? For ages, it was a trade-off. You either got that lush, kind of dark analog sound, or you got the precision and long delay times of digital. The Deluxe aimed to just erase that choice, make a studio-quality analog unit that could hang with digital feature-wise.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. What is an analog delay? We're talking bucket brigade devices, BBDs. For anyone maybe not deep in the tech weeds, what's the deal with BBDs?
Sure. So picture a line of tiny buckets, like capacitors. Your guitar signal, the electricity, gets stooped into the first bucket, then gets passed quickly down the line, bucket to bucket. Now, each time it's passed, it's not a perfect transfer. A tiny bit of the high-end fizz gets lost. And that loss, that natural filtering, is what gives analog delay its sound, that warm, kind of chewy musical decay. It sounds more like a real echo fading, less like a perfect digital clone.
And the Deluxe leans heavily into that BBD tech. The original Carbon Copy had one chip, right? Which kind of limited things.
It did, yeah. And that's where the Deluxe part really comes from hardware-wise. This one uses 4 high-quality MN3005 chips. These are basically modern reissues of the most legendary BBD chips. Stacking 4 lets them seriously stretch out the delay time. It's key to getting that maximum length.
Okay, so that brings us to the engineering puzzle. Adding digital stuff like tap tempo usually means adding a digital clock, which runs at high frequency. And BBDs are famously sensitive to high-frequency noise. How did they stop the digital side from messing up the analog sound?
That isolation is the real genius here. It's the breakthrough.
Right.
The digital brain, the chip handling tap tempo presets, all that it operates completely separate from the audio path. They basically put the analog BBD circuit in a Faraday cage, metaphorically speaking, shielded it heavily from the digital clock noise needed for the tap tempo. Your audio signal never gets digitized. It just takes orders from the digital side.
So the core audio path stays purely analog, and that's reinforced by the true analog dry path feature, right? Zero latency for your main guitar tone.
Exactly. Your unaffected signal just flies straight through, totally untouched. The delayed signal takes its trip through the BBDs, and then they recombine cleanly. No weird phase issues, which can sometimes happen when you mix dry and process signals.
Got it. Okay, let's move into what this actually means for the player. Segment 1, doubling down on tone and time. You mentioned those 4 MN3005s. What did that get us?
Time. Lots of it, relatively speaking. The original Carbon Copy, the M169, was great, but it topped out around 600 milliseconds. The Deluxe pushes that way out up to 1.2 seconds. That's double.
1.2 seconds in an analog pedal that size? Wow. I mean, that used to require big, expensive rack gear, didn't it? To get that kind of time while keeping the tone pure is, remarkable.
It really is. And having that extra time completely changes how you can use it. You still get that classic, dark, musical repeat. But with the longer time, there's more clarity, more headroom. It's not just for slapback anymore. You can get these huge, spacey ambient washes. It unlocks a whole different textural thing.
But, the sources also mention a common critique of the original. Sometimes it was too dark, hard to hear in a live band mix. How did the Deluxe address that?
Yeah, that was a valid point for some players. They solved it with the Bright switch. It basically brings the whole Carbon Copy family under one roof. MXR had put out a separate Bright version before. The Deluxe just builds that voicing in, flick the switch, and it changes the EQ filtering on the repeats, letting more high frequencies through.
So you get sharper repeats, more definition.
Exactly. More definition, more presence. If you're playing genres where the delay needs to cut through, like post-rock or maybe some worship music styles, that Bright mode is super useful. Want the classic, deeper BBD sound for rockabilly or subtle stuff? Just switch it off. It gives you the full tonal palette in one pedal.
Okay, so nailing the tone is half the battle. But controlling 1.2 seconds of analog delay, that needs modern features, which explains why the Deluxe is physically bigger than a standard MXR box.
Yeah, that larger size, the 4.5 by 5.5 inches, it wasn't just for show. And it's not just tap tempo. That's the baseline. You also get rhythmic subdivisions via the tap division button. Quarter notes, eighth notes, the crucial dotted eighth, and triplets. That's huge for rhythmic playing. Syncing perfectly with the drummer, getting those U2 Edge style patterns.
Ah, yeah, the dotted eight thing. You absolutely need that subdivision for those galloping rhythms. Can't fake it.
You really can't. And speaking of controls getting an upgrade, the modulation section is night and day compared to the original. Remember the original? You had to open the pedal up, use a tiny screwdriver on these little internal trim pots to adjust modulation speed and depth. Always a bit risky with static electricity, too.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Definitely not ideal for tweaking on the fly. Now it's just knobs on the outside.
Right. External knobs for mod speed, that's the rate or chorus speed, and mod width, which is the depth or the amount of pitch wobble. It's a massive improvement for usability.
Yeah.
And a little fun fact from the sources. The underlying modulation circuit is similar to the original, but with the external controls and better buffering, they kind of unlocked its potential. It can go faster and deeper, more extreme modulation than the original could.
So you can get anything from a subtle tape warble to a really thick chorus.
Exactly. From just a hint of movement to full-on Leslie-ish shimmer. Much wider range.
Okay, let's talk about the advanced stuff that makes this a real performance tool. Presets. On an analog delay. That was pretty much unheard of.
It really was. Analog pedals were always what you see is what you get with the knobs. The Deluxe changes that. That left foot switch does double duty. It lets you switch instantly between whatever the knobs are set to, right now your live setting, and one saved preset.
So, example. You could have a short, punchy slapback dialed in on the knobs for a verse, then stomp the preset switch, and bam, you're in a huge, long, modulated ambient wash for the chorus. Instantly.
Precisely. And making that switch smooth is key live, which is why they included selectable trails mode. You know, when you turn the pedal off, do the echoes just stop dead, or do they fade out naturally?
Right. Can you quickly break down the options there? True bypass versus buffered trails.
Sure. True bypass means when the pedal's off, your signal bypasses the circuit completely. Cleanest path. But if you turn off the delay, the echoes stop immediately. Kind of abrupt sometimes. Buffered trails bypass, you set that by holding down. Tap and preset when you power it up keeps a small part of the circuit active even when bypassed. This lets the existing repeats decay naturally after you switch the pedal off. Much smoother transition, especially for ambient stuff. It's almost essential for that style.
Makes sense. And then there's that expression tap input jack. Seems like it adds a lot of possibilities.
Oh, huge potential there. You can hook up a standard expression pedal and assign it to control mix, delay time, region, that's the feedback or number of repeats, or the mod width. Imagine using your foot to swell the delay mix in and out, or doing crazy pitch bending effects by sweeping the delay time. Adds a whole layer of real-time performance control.
Or you could just use it for an external tap tempo switch if you prefer that on your board setup.
Yep, it doubles for that too. Gives you options for how you want to integrate it. Combine that expression control with the stereo outputs. You've got a really serious analog processing tool.
So let's tie this back to the listener. Who is this pedal really for? Where does the M292 excel?
Well, its strength is its versatility, thanks to that hybrid design. For guitarists, it's become a staple for ambient players, worship guitarists, post-rock guys, especially those running stereo rigs where those wide delay trails really shine. For bass players, that analog dry path is critical. It keeps the low-end punch intact. And the bright switch option helps the repeats cut through without getting muddy. Adds dimension without losing fundamentals.
And it's not just for guitars or bass, right?
Absolutely not. In the studio, it's a fantastic analog flavor box. Great on synths, adds warmth to drum machines. You can even use it as an insert in your DAW during mixing. That high-fidelity analog path and the trails mode make it super useful for production.
Looking across all the reviews and analysis, the legacy seems pretty clear. This thing really did set a new benchmark for what an analog delay could be.
It really did. By packing the features of both the standard and bright carbon copies into one unit, and then adding all that digital control tap, presets, expression, it just offered so much analog goodness in one place. It basically proved you didn't have to choose between classic analog tone and modern features anymore.
And the reputation reflects that. Premier Guitar, Guitar World, they all raved about it. It often gets called the memory man for the modern player, which is high praise, referencing that iconic electro-harmonics delay, but with updated usability.
And you see it on pro boards. Guys like Andy Timmons, Nick Johnston, Zeta Strauss. Players who need reliable, great-sounding, versatile tools. Often the way they use it highlights that preset function, switching between a tight rhythmic delay and a huge ambient wash instantly. That seamlessness is key for pros.
So boiling it all down, the core achievement wasn't just slapping tap tempo on a carbon copy, it was the successful execution of that hybrid model, keeping the BBD audio path pure analog while having a separate isolated digital section handle all the complex control functions without letting digital noise ruin the analog magic.
That's the technological tightrope they walked, and they nailed it. Yeah, and it's a design philosophy MXR has used elsewhere since then, right? Like on their M305 tremolo, using digital control for an analog core.
Which really brings us to a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. If this hybrid approach works so well for analog delay, preserving the tone while adding massive control, what else could it unlock? Could we see a new wave of classic effects, maybe analog phasers, flangers, stuff that's historically resisted presets or tap tempo get the same treatment, gaining modern flexibility without sacrificing that vintage analog soul?
Yeah, it definitely feels like the lines are blurring in really creative ways. Our pedal boards are getting smarter and more powerful without necessarily losing their analog character. It's an exciting time for effects.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the sources on the MXR Carbon Copy Deluxe. Hope you feel like you got the full picture.